Week 2, Defining Conflicts and Interpretation in Christian Psychology. Most psychologists emphasize the fact that psychology is a science. Christians must appreciate the essential role in the science of nurturing, a curiosity and humility that encourages to put the wrong-headed notions about the empirical tests which are done throughout psychology. The definition of psychology may be pragmatic, but it does not leave out the nurturing effect. Christian psychology would stress that the definition reflects on a non-empirical or modernist assumption in the foundations of contemporary psychology. We see that the complex phenomenon should be simply reduced and clarified in its elements, not distinctly known without controversy. Though the problem of this modernist hope may eliminate and have a conflict and fail. As the 20th century made it clear, modernist methods did not eliminate violent actions or reactions. The perspective of Christian psychology is defined most generally as science that studies behavior and the process of mental illness. To omit the word from the definition of psychology reflects a least implicit refusal to confront the problem in a scientific solution. As a brief look at the pro-life definition, this assumes that a person is a person at conception. Abortion can thus be defined as murder. The pro-choice definition does not take that form, and the assumption that interprets medical science as birth not being until outside the womb. For each side, the issue is not a primary empirical evidence, but a behavioral and mental element based on tissue, whether it's a being before or after birth. This psychology operates within the acknowledgement of definition of a person. Meanings can be found in indisputable and unreliable foundations of science itself. Evolutionary psychology and various forms of reductive behavior commits to essential metaphysical vision of artificial, intelligent, and humanistic psychology. The argument of Christian psychology is that all psychologists should develop increasingly yet honest definitions of psychology, forthright acknowledgement of unavoidable non-science dimensions of their work. The Christian psychologists define psychology as postmodern critiques which have undoubtedly been influential. The word can be reduced and yet clear as it resolves conflict. Reducing a text is to element will necessarily begin with clear values that are distinctual in communicable interpretation. From Christian psychology perspective, the levels of examination view is far too optimistic. Human of science, with the biological level, it is elementive to say that science and Christianity do not go along, but yet they do, because the definition of psychology, which is optimistic amongst human, and the study of science and psychology, should challenge in paralyzing tendencies to exist within contemporary science and Christianity. Conflicts of interpretation are empirical reality, both outside science and Christianity. True objectives should therefore require development of scientific methods which include conflicts within oneself. Such psychologist David Meyer makes clear evidence of authentic and insightful methods of understanding the relationship between psychology and Christianity. However, a closer look, we find contentions with doing this type of psychological research. First, the connection of Meyer's example fails to distinguish between outer logical, the nature of being, and epistemological, the nature of knowing, and understanding the whole person. Unfortunately, however, the truncation of this building one's self-view in further study of scientific psychology, we develop a methodological approach and in defining the whole person as spiritual and yet metaphysical. Myers gives no argument in the view of science that could be accepted or replaced in a robust and yet vision of ancient roots of Christian thought. The need to approach this in a Christian scientific way is unitarily desirable as we understand God as creator, although philosophical naturalists and secularists' approach to science will not agree with our conclusions. The particular difficulties encountered have to do with the kind of knowledge and language which should be explained. Spiritual reality and non-physical phenomenon, ethics, and other modernist views could be applied. But such objects cannot be measured if we include God, angel, soul, mind, and propositional dreams as of the subconscious mental illness, personal agency, and feelings of thought. Christian would include Scripture as a legitimate experience of feelings and thoughts. The Christian world included a spiritual, legitimate source of knowledge compelled by Scripture. We believe that the existence of eternal classical realist approach is compatible in providing foundation of holistic view and vision of particular Christian realities. But this transitional model of science is ultimately grounded in transformative psychology, where it loses the true reality of a person. Meyer's works may reveal some correlations, but they miss out in the ongoing attention and studies of knowledge, whereas applying a firm Christian foundation. Christian counselors should pursue quality and ideographic knowledge of a person. A pastoral wisdom should apply change as by the grace of Christ and some greater wisdom and love. Given such sociological views, we can appreciate the approach of David Myers, but it loses the heart of psychology and metapsychology as a perspective in the whole, as in the whole of Christianity and Christian thought. The world psychology is different in relating to sectors of meaning. In Christian faith, the interaction tends to be different in many sectors. Psychology is a wider perspective in the genuine achievement. It is simply a perspective. Christian psychology may differ from people like Myers in significant ways. Most that describes conflicts of supernatural parallels between general religious and most psychological views. Such Christian realities believe in irrational, typified examples of a more vivid antidotes of statistical reality, have an antidote of experience in an interesting neurological way of discovering one's true self as a spirit being. It works out a simple definition of psychotherapy: unconditional positive regard, where people are instinctively and acceptable to learn to feel good about themselves. The personal situation theory has its Achilles heel in the research of psychology. As an introductional psychology, largely focused on science, the mind, and the axis between relationship and nurture, between neurological and sociological premises. Such ideas desire to probe and explain the heart, but lose much of their degenerate efforts in the endless bickering of trying to understand the mind. The Bible teaches us to understand how to think mundane operations of the heart in referral to God and turning blindly away from such untrue objects of affection. Myers largely ducks away from the pragmatic nature of inner motives as in distinctive of Christianity and Christian thought. The choice of words revealing personal context signify nature and component and loses much of its variables. Myers respectfully chooses such examples, but doesn't rely on fact but on nurture variables. This loses the heart of the Christian faith and the personal factor, because of Christian faith sees how actual behavior and mental process are instinctual and relational in Christian practices. Scientific psychology is rich in describing nature, but nature and the person is left impoverished and loses the actual person and physically embodied in a social environment. Psychology attempts to correlate two largely reverted to a genetic problem, but loses the depth of moral understanding and the power to explain a person enslaved to deadly thought or deadly things.